Hi Lipstick Philosophers! I really like this week's theme, mainly because I've been meaning to make a video similar to this. I actually have some recent experiences with the subject of harassment, but I'll tell you about those first. Last week I was wearing like a shorter dress. It was super 90s, like I cut off a maxi dress and like a pair of sheer tights and a pair of boots. And I was leaving my own Albertsons in my hometown, the yuppiest frickin' town that I can think of. And this guy, who looked to be about 43 years old, dirty, he was there with his, like, woman lady who looked equally as dirty, like, they looked like they might be on meth. I walked by and he's like, "Well, don't you look naughty?" And I literally wanted to turn around and, like, punch him in the balls, because that hasn't happened to me before. I mean, I've gotten the whistles before when I've been walking downtown with, like, another girl, but I can't remember a time when somebody blatantly, like, said something to me. It really made me mad. Particularly this year, I've never felt like more of a feminist, because I really haven't felt the need to be a feminist. And if you guys have been paying attention to what's been going on, at least in the American government and the US government, there's been a ton of legislation put forth, or at least discussed, talking about removing so many of women's reproductive rights, and it has made me so furious and so afraid for my future and, like, the future of our country, thinking that the Republican Party is so set on, like, controlling our vaginas and uteruses, and it's ridiculous. This particularly made me fired up, and so when the guy said that, I wasn't quick enough to turn around and be like, "Fuck you, dude." So I just stomped back out to my car. And then when I was in Portland, this was a little bit, I mean, not nearly as much harassment, but just like homeless people saying weird shit. But I was walking down the street by Voodoo Donuts, and if you guys know, Voodoo Donuts is a donut bakery in Portland, Oregon that makes crazy awesome flavors like maple bacon and cocoa puff, and like they make awesome flavors. And so I walked by and I was like, "Oh, it smells so good." And like a normal person would be like, "Oh yeah, donuts, yeah." But a homeless guy sitting on the side of the road was like, "Oh, is that my ball cheese? My ball cheese smells so good." And I mean, in that instance, it was just like more disgusting and like, really, dude? And less of like, that's the most that's happened to me ever, I think, at least in that period of time. As much as I am so, like, pro-gay rights and pro-gay marriage, I've been more focused on, like, myself this time, because my own rights are at stake, and I've never felt like that before. I've never felt like I've needed to argue for myself, argue for something that was gonna benefit me, because I've always felt so safe. And on the subject that you were talking about, Jess, the Take Back the Night thing, I don't know if that's like a worldwide thing, but they have a similar thing here in the US, at least in the Pacific Northwest, because they have one in Seattle, and then in Portland, and I think there's another one up here, but it's called Slut Walk. And it takes on the same ridiculous idea that women are blamed for being harassed and even raped because of how they dress. And at least with Slut Walk, women are basically walking down the street in mid-daylight in, like, slutty clothes to prove a point, because at least lately it's become such a common thing. Like, it's so weird how something so, like, simple at its core becomes so muddled and fucked up because of other people's personal beliefs and other people's political standings. Like, again, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention much to American politics, but you should, because it's really fucking crazy right now, because there's a presidential campaign going on. There has been so much parsing of words and classifying different kinds of rape, and an issue that's so debated between parties has never made me so sad. When it has come to, like, gay rights, like, I've been to protests before, and, like, I've talked to people specifically about it, and I've always been so fired up and, like, fighting for and, like, trying to explain and, like, like trying to change people's minds, and it's made me like passionate and angry and fired up like so much. But this issue of dealing with women's reproductive rights and parsing and legitimizing rape makes me incredibly sad, because it makes me realize that there are still people out there in power that don't get it. I didn't think I was gonna get this emotional talking about this, because I've never had an experience like that. Two of my best friends from school actually were raped, and neither of which I actually found out until several years after it happened, and neither of them told people. I think because there are so many rapes that go unreported, there are so many people that don't realize how closely affected they are. And I think that's so many people's problems, because they don't know. They don't know anybody, or they don't think they know anybody. And if they did, they would at least have some empathy and some sympathy. It reminds me of Big Brother this year, actually. One of the people in Big Brother this year is a lesbian. Another girl is from the South, and she said outright in one of the diary room sessions, she's like, I was afraid of gay people and lesbians because she didn't know any. Like, she didn't know any in the South because there aren't that many. And the ones who do live in the South aren't out because they're afraid for their own lives. And she said, she's like, well, once I got to know her, she was really nice and I felt really bad. And I wish more people would be like that, where instead of staying defiant and staying stuck in their ways because of maybe their religion or maybe the way that their parents told them, that if they actually went out and met somebody and heard about an experience, that it would change their mind. And I'm really, really sad and afraid that a person running for president can't do that. The problem with Mitt Romney, at least in dealing with women's issues, is that while he does have a wife, she has her own personal struggle. She doesn't have necessarily the same kind of struggle that other people do because she has MS. And they're Mormon. So they never really had that same idea about birth control because they don't do it. Like, their religion doesn't do birth control. All of his kids are grown men. He never had any daughters. So he doesn't have that same fatherly instinct dealing with a daughter. Because if he did have any daughters, I guarantee you he would have a different opinion about birth control and about rape and legitimate rape. And while Todd Akin, the guy who actually said the legitimate rape thing, and also if you guys didn't know, there's literally a guy running for Congress who said that women's bodies have ways to not get pregnant if it's a legitimate rape. Women's bodies do a thing that if they're actually getting raped, that they won't get pregnant. There's a person in this world that thinks that's true. And that is what is so wrong right now. That Roe v. Wade, something that happened 38 some odd years ago, is being questioned now. And I literally have never felt like more of a feminist in my whole life. And it's both invigorating and infuriating and terrifying. Yeah, there's my, what, 6 cents? 5 cents? 10 cents? Way more than 2 cents. But I really like the discussion because I think this is a really important topic, especially in my country right now. So I will see you guys next week.